Before we get started, I just wanted to warn you that spoilers will be ahead for today's video covering Stray. While it's a short experience, the narrative, the atmosphere, the story, and characters are just so enthralling, charming, and absorb me into a calm, cute, shocking, and overall warm adventure that I want you to play this for yourself. So please, before starting today's Why You Wouldn't Survive, play the game for yourself. It's a great experience. Also, cats are freaking awesome.
Meow. That's my cat toes. Oh, shit.
This is probably my game of the year, and I highly recommend it. So with that being said, once again, spoilers will be ahead. Today, we are discussing the world has gone to the cats, orange cat representation, stray pride, what would happen if the flood decided to make head crabs instead of abominations, when humanity takes doing the robot to an extremely literal level, the video game adaptation of Garfield, A Tale of Two Kitties. This game really makes you feel like a cat, a commentary on what truly makes us human. If you can't explain what actually happened, then aliens did it. Great Scott!
Some may call this junk, me, I call them treasures.
And the world can be beautiful, even in its darkest moments, game itself. Today, we are telling you why you wouldn't survive Stray's plague and aftermath. Now with these scenarios, we typically either do one of two outcomes. Either the large-scale threat of a universe suddenly comes barreling down on our current society, or we place your individual self into the post-apocalyptic or dangerous settings of those stories. Today, we will be doing the latter. So what about this cat game is so outwardly dangerous to your survival? Well, let's go over a brief summary of the game before we get to that conclusion. After an orange cat following its pack within the walls of a giant man-made structure falls down into a garbage heap, it slowly explores and delves into exactly what happened to its former Homo sapien servants. With the help of a refurbished drone, it was able to befriend many of the robots living underground as they tried to figure a way out of their centuries-old confinement in the dark, being restricted and forced to live in fear by their flying peacekeepers known as the Violent Sentinels, while also their reluctance at escape being justified due to the organic bacterium known as the Zurks, lurking outside, ready to eat their metallic bodies alive. With the cat and its newfound friend of B12, they go from the slums through sewers to a giant tree to Midtown to help a rebellious group called the Companions, who seek freedom for their mechanical brethren in a dark, dank, but vibrant atmosphere. While no direct explanation is given to what happened to humanity, the robotic denizens mimic their culture, behaviors, and obsessions. Stray sees you guide oppressed inorganic life to break from the overbearing darkness with glimpses of color and life, and create a new dawn for those that precede mankind. While it isn't discussed in detail, humanity indeed has all been wiped out by what has only been described as the plague. Whatever viral pandemic swept our world, it was most likely not mammalian in nature, considering felines are able to freely walk the surface of the earth with no repercussions, birth defects, nor abnormalities or signs of illness. Just unique to killing off Homo sapiens, apparently. For the virus to have successfully pulled off a 100% completion rate in Plague Inc., it's very possible this undescribed plague could have been both airborne and or waterborne, or even a bacteria with viral capabilities in nature, while also being heavily resistant to all currently known drugs and vaccines, or possibly even as a conspiracy. Considering cats are the only shown biological animals besides insects on the Earth's surface in the events of Stray, it may be a mutated strain of Toxoplasmosis gondii. This new version of the parasitic protozoan could very well prove to infect water supplies just through an infected cat's feces that can spread to eating food, usable soil, and drinking water. It's estimated that 30 million people in the United States alone carry some form of the Toxoplasma parasite. So possibly an event that triggers these parasites to become deadly or triggered by some sort of bacteria could spark them to become more contagious outside of just cat feces or eating undercooked or raw meat, and possibly getting into our water supplies, poisoning our drinkable water, and spreading like wildfire. PSA, toxoplasmosis isn't really an awful thing. This is all just theory stuff for a video. Take good care of your kitties, keep them indoors to prevent them eating wild animals, and don't allow them to eat raw meat, and properly dispose their poop poopies in a bag. Never flush their feces down your toilet. If your cat does have toxoplasmosis, it is incredibly difficult for current water filtration systems to filter out the parasite. That is your PSA for today. But this disease's toll on us had also been compounded by an international drought, causing humanity to dig deep into the Earth's core to harvest whatever water they could. Whether these reservoirs of water were full of mycobacteria, which is able to survive in water supplies for years, could be up for debate, and it could have been a veritable nail in the coffin for the remaining population. It is also very possible that the remaining freshwater reserves on Earth could have been infected with cholera-like bacteria that became hard to kill. It's also possible that it was heat resistant due to the Earth's natural thermal energy, making boiling water to kill it impossible. With the outside threat and diminishing food and water supplies, humanity sought to make wide-scale underground city-sized bunkers for however long it might take. As the disease ticked away at mankind's remaining numbers, those within the freshly created concrete safe havens flustered in their new way of life. Considering these walled-off cities were completely in the dark, inherent issues would follow for humans and their basic necessities under the false stars. Without the advent of the sun above, most plant life would simply die off, bar ones under sun lamps and in greenhouses. However, humanity did devise a new strand of plant life that wouldn't require sunlight, hence the greenery that tends to grow underground here. For those that survived, they would be split into classes of the poor and wealthy, as shown in the stark contrast between the slums and Midtown. The extremely confined nature of the underground city meant trash had very limited space to be dumped. Refuse of the higher class would be thrust down into the slums, so the poor and their scarce supplies would be forced to scavenge. They would deal with poor living conditions and possibly contract the very disease that forced them into this fortress, or to fall sick to any number of unhygienic diseases. This could also be the very origin point of the plague discussed by the robots and logs. Much like the Black Plague was spurred by widespread unhygienic living conditions, lending to more conspiracy theories that the people were forced to live in bunkers due to other causes besides sickness, like the widespread drought, nuclear winter, alien invasions, and heck, maybe it's just one giant Vault-Tec experiment. Regardless, even with the lower class repurposing as much trash as they can, most discarded material would just build up more and more clutter as they lived in deeper squalor. To combat this, scientists had repurposed plastic-eating bacteria known as Ideonella succiasis, a real-world bacteria shown to slowly degrade plastic materials. Even recently, a veritable super enzyme capable of eating through plastic bottles at an exponential rate was discovered in a Japanese dump. But within the underground, the forced advent of direct trash accumulation staring them down face to face, scientists would fully retrofit this mutant bacteria at a very expedited rate, not really testing the ramifications of what it could do in order to completely eat through all this trash and refuse. But this scientific breakthrough would come at a heavy cost. As discussed earlier, maybe this bacteria was designed much earlier, and when exposed to toxoplasmosis, did it get within drinking water to make the parasite much deadlier, eventually extinguishing mankind. And I mean, yes, in most cases, this is where I would say, yeah, you're not surviving this scenario because everyone eventually dies, either due to the plague, poor living conditions, rebellion and violent unrest, and a lot more end-of-game clauses. But memories of ourselves could very well carry on. And if there is one thing I always consider a form of living or dying, is if you, as the person you are, including all the memories, personality, and core features of you, are erased or preserved in some way, that is what it truly means to be either alive or dead. All that's left of us will be our robotic companions left behind in our stead, mimicking our behaviors, personalities, and ways of life. Many would be quick to presume these artificial intelligence just missed their former meatbag masters and are just copying us. But on the contrary, they could very well be us. The robots that the stray cat runs into throughout its journey are seen burning incense, setting up restaurants to eat, indulging in beautiful scenery and cozy home spaces, and more. Despite not having the sense of smell, taste, touch, what really makes a human human, They goof around and toss buckets of paint, act like samurai wearing hats and wielding blunt weapons, playing recognizable songs on guitar in the street, acting as grandmothers knitting sweaters for others, stomping around as gangsters, betraying others in their pursuit of monetary gain, and sons missing and reuniting with their fathers. Many facets of human life still persisting. It is possible that these robots are in fact humans, or what remains of them. The drone companion of Stray Cat, known as B12, had also eventually collected itself and its memories of its former humanity. Digging deep into its long-forgotten databanks, B12 deciphered that itself was at one point a human scientist that uploaded its consciousness, or at least a copy of it, into the electronic network that the cat was eventually able to upload into the drone companion. B12, after experiencing the world and seeing glimpses and hints at his past life so that it could piece together its scattered memories, meaning the scientist in its robotic shell was technically alive, lending to the idea that all robots that don't act like robots, like those found in the control rooms, are most likely former humans who had their consciousness uploaded to an electronic network, but never regained the memories of their former life. The fact that B12 may have been the only robotic life to regain full recollection may be in part due to its studies as a former scientist, or due to his higher intellect. But for a majority of people, many will never regain who they fully once were, acting as they did before and woefully going about their lives, helping or hurting one another, wanting there to be something more beyond the walls, wanting the senses of humanity, missing their flesh-bound creators, not knowing their origins, all while trying to survive and fearing those that keep them within their confinement of their darkened underground, either by a facade of violent protection or those that want to consume them. Well, now you got an idea, and it took a while to get here, but this is where you will be placed in this reality. No living person in existence will have an immunity, be a carrier, be a chosen one, or have plot armor to keep their meat suit going. You will never see yourself as you were before. Your body will die and decay, and your veritable soul will be transported into that of a machine at the cost of your memories, that you may or may not ever fully get back. So surely, living as a machine that just needs a tune-up and charge every now and then means that your survival is somewhat guaranteed, right? Not necessarily. Remember that bacteria that adapted and evolved to eat our refuse? Well, after decades of being underground without any natural light and consistently eating large amounts of varied waste, this bacteria adapted and evolved into something called the Zurks, a voracious biological creature known to do nothing more than hunt in hordes and eat at a non-stop rate, eating anything it can get a hold of, even metal and biomass. At first, Zurks only fed upon trash left behind by the humans as small bacterial life. But years after humanity's demise did they begin to grow into what looked like head crabs from Half-Life, letting out cute little slight chirps to communicate with others of their species. How they suddenly jumped this evolutionary stage so quickly is probably due to the dead bodies left behind by humanity. All throughout the game, we do not see one trace of any man, woman, or child. No skeletal remains, no nothing. It's most likely that the Zurks utilized the biomass of the corpses of man and began to pull these biological resources to create the flesh clusters clinging to structures we see infesting parts of the city not inhabited by the robots. The more of this biomass created, the more the eggs that Zurks can emerge from by the dozens or even hundreds. Much like, yet to a much smaller scale, does this resemble the biomass harvesting habits of Halo's Flood, Dead Space's Necromorphs, and The Last of Us Cordyceps spores. The Zurks most likely acting as a hive mind, considering anytime prey is actively targeted by a small number, all Zurks in a given vicinity will swarm its prey and dogpile on them until their adhesive and clingy nature bogs the victim down so heavily they will fall and then slowly be eaten alive by the many of the Zurk horde, except for cats, since they have 9 lives, dissolving the flesh of the creature and absorbing it so that it may return its biomass to the nests. It's no surprise there wasn't any organic life seen in the underground city, and why the robots immediately considered the cat as a threat the second it entered. No organic life besides plants have really been in their vicinity for ages, showing that Zurks have effectively utilized all organic life besides plants to to further their nests in the dark and deep. Only inorganic sentience was allowed to live, and only because they warded themselves off. Wandering out would most certainly mean their doom, as the Zurks evolved to eat their metallic robot bodies. There is barely anything they will not eat. Their initial purpose to eat waste has now become to eat whatever they can to grow exponentially, leading to the game's greatest mystery, deep within the sewers of the underground city where a majority of its water lied, and the least amount of any kind of light could reach did the greatest amalgamation of Zurk flesh accumulate. Biomass engrossing out far and wide, creating tons of these giant peering eyes that watch over anything that wanders into its fleshy tomb, acting as one giant pulsating organism. What these eyes mean as a threat, as an evolution, as a purpose for the Zurks is unknown, but we can come to some conclusions. The Zurks amassing tons of flesh of humans, rodents, and who knows what else could mean this Zurk amalgamation is gaining sentience of its own, and that it may indeed pull a mini Gravemind level threat, using its ever-expanding hive mind intelligence amongst the Zurks to effectively hunt down and consume remaining robots, eventually consuming all if left unchecked. While direct UV light and sunlight can quickly extinguish the small forms of the Zurks, making them pop like a water balloon, it's more than likely the environment in which it gestates will allow it to grow beyond control and wipe out anything that could possibly expose its core to high volumes of light. But even then, it will seek the darkest and dankest areas to avoid light in general. The eyes of the Zurk will spectate anything that wanders within, and if it feels slightly threatened in its core, it will summon a horde. The only places out of their reach are highly restricted and closed off portions of the underground city that may or may not get invaded by this flood-like entity if one or more robots accidentally try and escape, and allow the Zurks to break containment and hellaciously consume the unarmed and indefensible robot populace. For those that try and venture out to discover ways to kill or combat the Zurks in any way, the oppressive combat drones of the Sentinels will be hindering you at every step, acting as the state police that will tase you with long-range electrical bolts and then imprison you if you are caught doing anything deemed unlawful by robots of higher upper class, scheming or attempting to escape the underground or anything like that. The Sentinels will come by the dozens to put you in prison, even if you wanted to devise a way of fighting back against the growing threat of the Zurks and freeing the robot population. You will still be forced to live in squalor and in fear without any way of rising above it due to an oppressive regime. So at the end of the day, you as a human being will perish to the plague. You could be forced to migrate to walled underground cities to either eventually die from the plague made from unhygienic living conditions, from lack of decent resources leading to malnourishment and dehydration, or civil unrest and bloody conflict. All of mankind eventually do disappear, and you are just not built differently enough to escape that fate. Now, if you are some of the people to have your consciousness uploaded into a robot, you will most likely live as a hollowed out version of yourself. Key features of your personality will shine through, but a majority of the memories of your past and yourself may be lost to time, unless you are one of high enough intelligence to regain your former full humanity. Considering the robots here have lived for at least a century without any change in their lives, besides the rebellious companions, are hoping and relying on a freaking cat to be the hero we deserve. Yeah, no, I've had cats for a majority of my life, and out of everything this game portrayed, the most unrealistic thing is a cat giving a flying fuck about you and the well-being of all these other can openers. And I seriously doubt you, in your limited memories, will be leading or being a part of any forefronts to upheave the current status quo. Now you might say to yourself, I'll just fashion a rudimentary weapon to splat the tiny little Zurks. They're just tiny little enemies. I mean, you could just step on them. They ain't no threat. Stash some guns here and there, have a bat ready, pop them with the pipe revolver. Easy peasy. However, arming yourself with melee weapons, guns, explosives, or anything to fight the Sentinels and kill the Zurks will most likely not even be entirely executable or conceivable, since most robots, besides one brandishing a stick and a whole group working in secret just to get a UV weapon working, these robots are unarmed. It's possible the Sentinels do routine checks for weapons, or what can be deemed a weapon, meaning stockpiling weapons in general will be extremely difficult, and even then, the Zurks themselves could easily see to eating any weapons you stockpile if left in unguarded areas. Remember, they eat anything, even weapons. It will take everything in your power just to defend yourself. Escaping with a heavy plan in mind with other like-minded individuals may be your go-to, like those found in Stray. But in most cases, all robotic life will be unable to run away from the hordes of the Zurks as they scurry up on your legs and slow you down. They will overwhelm you, making it to where you can't move whatsoever, and eventually will melt away your frame and delete your mainframe, extinguishing the last digital thread of your existence. You will be gone. Now, going out and venturing out, that might be too scary for you. Well, waiting around in the slums, midtown, or the tree won't do you any good either. Now, you won't die of starvation or dehydration since you lack the weaknesses of your former biological form, but eventually, the horrifying germination of the Zurks will reach an unstoppable, irreversible point of no return, and will someday come breaking down the barriers of the city, or bleeding into water and making more of their eggs to invade the walled cities, eating everyone and everything, and leaving only behind faint glimpses of human and natural structures, infested by the Zurks in their hive mind expansion of anything the sun's light never touches. You and your copy will both be assimilated far below, while cats continue to rule the world above, fulfilling the prophecies of the ancient Egyptians. Actually, come to think of it, at the end of Stray, the roof opens up, giving all inhabitants of the walled city an opportunity to leave and live on the surface of the earth like they always wanted, including the Zurks. Yeah, they pop when exposed to sunlight, but they'll most likely escape anyways and hunt at night now that they have free reign. And that'll eventually doom all animals on the planet as they eat and consume everything. Thanks, cat. You really saved the day. You really were a true catastrophe. Worth it. Oh, that about ends today's. Wait, yeah, that was a game where you play as a cat, right? Holy hell, I diverged from that completely, didn't I? Thanks for bearing with me and listening to me rant about the vague but interesting lore of a game based on a cat in a dystopic future. I think that's how you say, is it dystopic or dystopic? Did you enjoy today's video? Were there points that you think I got spot on or completely wrong? Let me know in the comments, as any comments, good or bad, are good for the YouTube algorithm. I enjoyed making this one and hope to bring you some more video content soon. Now, if you're wondering where I've been for the last 2 months, I've literally just not been in the best mindset. I haven't had the creative spark to want to write scripts and just move as a human being recently. Hell, I feel like the robots in this game just doing mundane tasks with hints of humanity peppered. That's honestly how I felt and why this game really called out to me. Another reason is that I'll be going for surgery to possibly have my thyroid removed, as there has been an abnormally large growth there. So keep your fingers crossed that everything goes okay. It's just weighed down on me mentally and made me realize I want to do more for myself, for my friends, my family, for you guys, and my channel. So hopefully after this surgery, I'll be in better condition, physically and mentally. But please wish me luck. And yeah, that's where I've been, and if I disappear again, just know I'll try my best to get back as soon as possible. I have a lot of fun video ideas I still want to do. Thank you for watching today's video. Like, comment, and stuff, be a patron and support the channel and its many unnecessary hiatuses. Sorry about that. And hey, you can be featured here alongside YouTube channel members. You don't have to though, and your simple view today is all I really ask for. Actually, strike that. If there is something I can ask you to do, it's to adopt a kitty in your area today and help our awesome feline friends. And if you already have a kitty, please give them a big old smooch on their forehead for me. I freaking love cats. I got 3 of my own right here. Aren't they adorable? Stay happy, stay healthy, and most importantly, never forget to stay well. That's cute.